chest. And all these pieces. Almost all the streets that I've crossed got flowers and pictures posted on the sidewalk. Memories of almost all the homies I've lost. I feel like mama's looking at me like it's my fault. He be alive, he wasn't fucking with you, demon. And now he gone and I'm still picking up the pieces. I swear to God, I really felt that in my chest. She looked me in my eyes and said, I pray your mama next. I stride on, escape. For me expressing that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I stride on, but there's no escape. For me expressing that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I go high. I wake up flinching in my sleep, I'm fighting demons. I wake up sweating on my sleep, I think I'm bleeding. One in the neck in case somebody tries to sleep. I go high. I wake up flinching in my sleep, I'm fighting demons. I wake up sweating on my sleep, I think I'm bleeding. One in the neck in case somebody tries to sleep. Almost all the streets that I've crossed got flowers and pictures posted on the sidewalk. Memories of almost all the homies I've lost. I feel like mama's looking at me like it's my fault. He be alive, he wasn't fucking with you, demon. And now he gone and I'm still picking up the pieces. I swear to God, I really felt that in my chest. She looked me in my eyes and said, I pray your mama next. I stride on, escape. For me expressing that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I go high. I feel the unholy spirit when it's moving through. Dark side, dark side. Clearing up all the lies and the rumors too. Dark side, dark side. You say you want my life, you gotta fight me first. Dark side, dark side. Come outside round here, there's nothing like church. Dark side, come and get this life. They talked about Jesus, give them something to Babylon. Just know my whole team is battle tested and battle strong. One world speaking that Tower Babel tongue. Cole Hammurabi thinking ancient Babylon. No pun intended, Reaganomics had us under avalanche. We took off like a rocket, they was praying we could never launch into the upper echelon. You can never be yourself. Every day is Comic-Con, fast money Ramadan. Who collected Condom? Cold check my vital signs. Motel 6 flow. Woke up with the brightest mind. Out of sight, out an idle mind. They hate it when you idolize. We living in the final times. Guess you Ellen Keller blind. Spirit when it's moving through. Dark side, dark side. Clearing up all the lies and the rumors too. Dark side, dark side. You say you want my life, you gotta fight me first. Dark side, dark side. Come outside round here, there's nothing like church. Dark side, come and get this life. Put my soul on the altar, I never offer a sacrifice. The blood that we need for the lamb ain't never acting right. I take my path tonight, knowing that I might have to fight. I probably grab a knife and a 9. I guess I'm packing light, focus on the now. Just as much as the afterlife, I recognize the spirit is only taking up half the fight. Stairway to heaven, he won't make it up half a flight. He working, making bacon, bitch, probably out on the Sabbath night. Shoot for the moon, hoping to hit a satellite. You can ask them why when they see me, they call on Adonai. When we both know at the most he telling you half a lie. Feel the transition begin to happen when passing time. I came back in the sky, just like an astronaut, to say you selling Africans out. See you and asking Mike, and it's sad to say they really had it bad for Christ. And I hear the Habasha thinking they are the half as white. Spirit when it's moving through. Dark side, clearing up all the lies and the rumors too. Dark side, dark side. You say you want my life, you gotta fight me first. Dark side, dark side. Come outside round here, there's nothing like church. Dark side, dark side. Come and get this life work.
All right, there we go. I don't know what was going on right there. Don't know exactly what was going on right there, but let me get my audio together. Everybody good? Can everybody hear me clearly? Shit, we got some straight audio. See, I'm jumping. My signal trying to hate on me for no reason. And now I see exactly why. All right. Let me see what that was about. What that is. All right. So, shout out to everybody that's in the building. Power to the dark side family. Okay, cool. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Power to the dark side. Y'all already know we got to give a special praise to the most beautiful goddess of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEMia, whose image is the most beautiful Whoopi Goldberg. Shout out to all my Babel builders that are in the building. Remember, if you are listening to this, together we are Babel. Let's build. Kind of tone my mic down just a tad bit because lately I've been hearing it's been all the way up there. I don't know why is everything moving so fucking slow right now. All right, boom. Let's get it right there. Right. So, yeah, man. Let me shout out Planet Free Spirit in the building. Appreciate you in the mix. Shout out to Domo. You already know, man. Definitely on that bell hooks. Some of that Kimberly Crenshaw. So you already know, man. We definitely getting it in today. You know, especially talking about plantation patriarchy. Right. So I got a little bit of stuff a little something I'm gonna read. I'll probably drop the link. We can go ahead and jump in the midst of the discussion. But I think it's something that we definitely got to deal with. Shout out to Karada Introvert, was good. Power to the dark side, Mongo Slave. Appreciate you in the mix, guys. Definitely. I know that ain't just happened. Yes, that did. All right, yeah, my phone is bugging right now. Am I back in the mix? Okay, yeah, we back in the mix. My fault. My phone is like moving on some weird type. On a weird type time. So anyway, but what we're gonna be getting into today, it'll be from ISSUU, right? This will basically be chapter 1 of Plantation Patriarchy. right? This is chapter 1 of Plantation Patriarchy, right? And so what it goes into, uh, and so this is, and just so y'all know, uh, this is basically, this is Black Man and Masculinity by Bell Hooks, right? So this is from We Real Cool, Black Man and Masculinity by Bell Hooks. Just want to give y'all a little bit of insight on exactly what we got going on. Y'all can hear me okay, right? While I'm reading. Were y'all able to hear what we was gonna be reading from? So basically, what it goes into is it talks about, well, we'll just start out. It says, throughout our history in this nation, African Americans have had to search for images of our ancestors. When Ivan Van Sertima published his awesome work, they came before Columbus, telling the world about the Africans who journeyed to this land before the colonizing Spaniards. It should have created an academic revolution, changing the nature of how American history is taught, particularly of African American history. Decolonized Black folks realized that masses of African American people once believed that ignorance was at the core of white anti-Black racism. After a militant civil rights struggle led to the new ways of knowing, and those ways of knowing were systemically ignored by elites within the power structure, it became evident that the root of white supremacy was not ignorance, but the desire on the part of the unenlightened white people to maintain their dominance over Black people in this nation and around the world. Even when liberal white individuals make popular movies like Amistad, which offer a radically different understanding of a role played by Africans in this so-called New World, most citizens continue to believe that African American history begins with slavery. Now, that is a major issue, right? Want to make sure, I hope everybody is able to hear me reading. So that is a major issue. Starting out, us believing that, coming in with our history beginning with slavery. And that's, to me, that's a major issue that ends up happening, right? Historically, when you end up, when they created this connection between the diaspora and the continental, right? When you create the basically the separation between the diaspora and the continental, basically where our history picks up at is in change, right? And so that's why a lot of the time, whenever you will hear a story of people who start out with either not being Black, and then second not being having any relation to being a continental, their next motive, they have to do that, and so their next motive is to do what? Destroy the history of slavery. So some might say it happened in reverse. Some might say it didn't happen at all. Some might say only 10 people came. Who knows? But you get a lot of different stories. I want to continue reading. I wanted to make sure y'all can hear me clear while I'm reading. I hope so. All right. And so African explorers come into the New World before Columbus were men. The fact that they did not seek to dominate and or destroy the indigenous native people who were living on these shores reveals that their sense of masculinity was not defined by the will to dominate and colonize folks who were not like them. The fictive Africans in the film Amistad are sensitive, spiritual learned men of feeling who struggle to cope with the alien ways of colonizing white settlers. Compare and contrast this fictive image, a representation based on true accounts, with the image of Africa, Africans, and African Americans interested in recognizing African roots in films like Made in America and more recent Undercover Brother. Now, something that is really, really kind of key, right? One of the things that's something that's I mean really key to listen to. Hold on, real fast. Let me see something. But yeah, one of the things that's really key is how is the necessity to show dominance, right? That's one of the things that's key. The necessity to show dominance. And not only to show dominance, but how they believe that they have to go about doing it. Right? And it's usually through the conquering of other lands and other people. Like only through the suppression of other men do they feel like they're men. And so what you get is a combative spirit automatically, right? One that kind of has to almost like this spirit. It's almost like they're uncomfortable on a constant level, so they have to. They're always in competition, right? It's always a race. I want to call. So, make sure y'all can hear me. Mic check. Okay, cool. So, so oops. Um, so yeah, Made in America and more recent Undercover Brother. So in these films, the black male who is interested in Africa is portrayed as a lying, um, clownish buffoon, easily duped by faulty Afrocentric ideas. These negative images are created by white and black males. They help maintain white supremacy thinking, white supremacist thinking. Most black folks, particularly black males, who have power within the mainstream film industry, focus their attention on the flaws in the film Amistad, basing their dislike on the fact that it was created by white. Very few viewers were willing to champion this film for the radical representation of black maleness and Africa that was depicted. Yet, this is the type of representation that should be seen by American moviegoers because it challenges stereotypes. Audience responses to this film exposed a great deal about the struggle for patriarchal power influential black males engage in with white men. The unidentified gender war that has been taking place since slavery ended. Uh-oh, I think I just cut something. Let me go back a little bit. Because a lot of people, we like to say that the gender war only exists on YouTube. But Bell Hook says that we're wrong about that. It says that this is an unidentified gender war that has been taking place since slavery ended. When we read the annals of history, the autobiographical writings of free and enslaved black men, it is revealed that initially black males did not see themselves as sharing the same standpoint as white men about the nature of masculinity. Period. We had totally different views. Transplanted African men, even those coming from community ties where sex roles shaped the division of labor, where the status of men was different and most times higher than that of women, had to be taught to equate their higher status as men with the right to dominate women. They had to be taught patriarchal masculinity. They had to be taught that it was acceptable to use violence to establish patriarchal power. What does that mean? What does that mean? When he talks about establishing violence in order to maintain patriarchal power, now we get into the conversation of that Kevin Samuels was bringing up when he talks about domestic discipline. What was the point of domestic discipline in the conversation on having domestic discipline? The whole reason was to maintain what? Patriarchal power. He felt like there's a line that once that line is crossed, in order to maintain your stronghold on power, you must show your strength. The gender politics of slavery and white supremacy domination of free black men was the school where black men from different African tribes with different languages and value systems learned in the New World patriarchal masculinity. Writing about the evolution of black male involvement in patriarchal masculinity in the essay Reconstructing Black Masculinity, I write, although the gender politics of slavery denied black men the freedom to act as men within the definitions set by white norms, this notion of manhood did become a standard used to measure black male progress. Narratives of Henry Box Brown, Josiah Henson, Frederick Douglass, and a host of other black men revealed that they saw freedom as the change in status that would enable them to fulfill the role of chivalric, benevolent patriarch. I'm gonna need some help on that word. Whoever got that word, I know somebody know it. Chivalric. I might be saying it right. Chivalric, benevolent patriarchy. Free. They would be men able to provide for and take care of their families. Describing how he wept as he watched a white slave overseer beat his mother. William Wells Brown lamented, "Experience has taught me that nothing can be more heartrending than for one to see a dear and beloved mother, a sister tortured, and to hear their cries and not be able to render them assistance." But such is the position which an American slave occupies. Frederick Douglass did not feel his manhood affirmed by intellectual progress. See, this is the difference. He didn't feel his manhood affirmed by intellectual progress. It was affirmed when he fought man to man with the slave overseer. This struggle was a turning point in Douglas' life. It rekindled in my breast the smoldering embers of liberty. It brought up my more dreams and revived a sense of my own manhood. I was a changed being after that fight. I was nothing before. I was a man now. The image of black masculinity. Like, really, you gonna call now? Like, the image of black masculinity that emerges from slave narratives is one of the hard-working men who belong to assume full patriarchal responsibility for families and kin. This testimony shows that enslaved black males were socialized by white folks to believe that they should endeavor to become patriarchs by seeking to attain the freedom to provide and protect for black women, to be benevolent patriarchs. Benevolent patriarchs exercise their power without using force. And it was this notion of patriarchy that educated black men coming from slavery into freedom sought to mimic. However, a large majority of black men took as their standard the dominator model set by white masters. When slavery ended, these black men often used violence to dominate black women, which was a repetition of the strategies of control white slave masters used. That's something we got to discuss. So a lot of the time, shout out to Angel, I appreciate you in the building. A lot of the time, the discussion ends up being, well, the good old days. What good old days? What good old days? And then you understand what they mean by the good old days. They almost sound like the European when they talk about it, because then in the next sentence they begin to talk about domestic discipline. Now, mind you, the comment, and this was what was sad. I literally had to listen to a lady defend this man Kevin Samuels and his take on domestic discipline, as if he was not talking about whooping on a woman, like clearly. But what she said was, well, no, that's not what he meant. She started bringing up BDSM. That's what she tried to compare this shit to a BDSM conversation. But mind you, it all started out with a brother that came on there. I don't know why I called him a brother. A clown that came on there claiming that his sister had been getting out of line. That's what his claim was. His sister was getting out of line, and that she had got into some of the men that was in their faces. And in the next statement, Kevin Samuels comes in and says, well, you do have domestic discipline. and he talks about what some white dude said to Barbara Walters about the reason why women are able to get out of line is because they don't have fear. It's fear. And you have to know what fear, what the consequence, what fear, what consequences. And then the conversation is about domestic discipline. So obviously, the conversation was about the man's sister who got out of line. They should have been able to enforce domestic discipline in order to get her in line. That was very clear. Appreciate, yeah, definitely, Planet. That's a free spirit. That's exactly what we was like. That whole combo was crazy, and I didn't understand what the woman exactly was trying to do. If she was just either doing a cover up, or if she was completely blind to exactly what was taking place in the conversation. But it was really sad. It really was. And so the point was that when you felt like a line was crossed, and this is what he even stated, that we both agree that he comes up with some cold word, pineapples. And when he says pineapples and you don't stop, then the door is open for domestic discipline. This is where we at. This is where we at right now. So clearly, by the time slavery ended, patriarchal masculinity had become an accepted ideal for most black men, an ideal that would be reinforced by 20th century norms. Despite the overwhelming support of patriarchal masculinity by black men, there was even in slavery those rare black males who repudiated, who repudiated the norms set by white suppressors. I'm gonna assume that they went against it. Individual black male renegades who either escaped from slavery or changed their circumstances once they were free, often found refuge among Native Americans, thus moving into tribal cultures where patriarchal masculinity, which is with its insistence on violence and subjugation of women and children, was not the norm. Marriages between Native women and African American men during Reconstruction also created a context for different ways of being and living that were counter to the example of white Christian family life. In southern states, enclaves of African folks who who had escaped slavery or joined with renegade Maroons once slavery ended, kept alive African cultural retentions that also offered as a subculture distinct from the culture imposed by whiteness. So you can see that even when you're dealing that in general, Western culture, or what they call Western culture, is something that is foreign to even the natives here. So even when you're dealing with Aboriginal culture here, or you're dealing with Aboriginal culture in Africa, or you're dealing with Aboriginal culture, well, we'll just stay there. We'll just stay there. Here and in Africa, the Americas and in Africa, what you see is there's a conflict of interest with how they view women, how they view family structure. And you wonder why we talk about the nuclear family in general. But see, when people talk about the nuclear family, the discussion always takes place through the lens of the nuclear family. You can't have that discussion and have a fair argument if you're literally. Oh, sorry. Somebody standing outside my damn door. Yeah, so yeah, you can't have that argument. In general, I don't know what that was about. Somebody was like literally just stopped at my door. I don't know if they was trying to listen or what. But anyway, let me go back into it. So with keen critical insight, Rudolph Bird, co-editor of the anthology Traps, African American Men on Gender and Sexuality, offers in his groundbreaking essay, The Tradition of John, the mytho-poetic folk hero John as a figure of alternative masculinity, Bird explained, committed to overthrow of slavery and the ideology of white supremacy. John is the supreme antagonist of Old Master, and various God, hold on, somebody. Really just, okay. All right, excuse me, where was I? Old Master and the various okay. Old Master and the various hegemonic structures he and his descendants have created. And most disheartening, many of them particularly still cherished in John's various acts of resistance are reflected his most exemplary values and attributes: mother wit, the power of laughter and song, self-assertion, self-examination, self-knowledge, a belief that life is process grounded in the fertile field of improvisation. Hope, and most importantly, love, and his aspirations, nothing less than the full and complete emancipation of Black people from every species of slavery. These are these are the constitutive elements and aspirations that together compromise the tradition of John. In these days of so many hours, it is a mode of Black masculinity grounded in enduring principles that possesses a broad and vital instrumentality. Clearly, the individual Black males who strategized resistance to slavery, plotted paths to freedom, and who invented new lives for themselves and their people were working against the white supremacist patriarchal norm. They were the men who set the stage for the Black male abolitionists who supported more freedom for women. Alexander Crummell, in his address before the Freedmen's Aid Society in 1883, spoke directly to the program for racial uplift that would focus on Black women, particularly on education. He announced in his address that The lot of the black man on the plantation has been sad and desolate enough, but the fate of black women has been off her entire existence from the day she first landed. A naked victim of the slave trade has been degradation in its extremest forms. Frederick Douglass spoke regularly on the behalf of gender equality in his 1888 talk. I am a radical women's suffrage man. He made his position clear. The fundamental proposition of the women's suffrage movement is scarcely less simple than that of the anti-slavery movement. It assumes that women is herself, meaning a separate being, that she belongs to herself just as fully as a man belongs to himself, that she is a person and has all the attributes of personality that can be claimed by man, and that her rights of person are equal in all respects to those of man. So what is the point? What's the point? We can't talk about being anti-Bible. We can't be anti-Abrahamic culture and be pro-patriarchy. They don't mix. You can't. You can't be pro-patriarchy and anti-Abrahamic faith. They don't mix. Either women are property or women is a being of her own. That's just it. They either belong to men because and see, and this is where it gets easy and it gets very Eurasian. Women can belong to men because we have the physical power, right, to take control, correct? The physical power. That's Eurasian. That's not Afrocentric. That's not even Aboriginal. That's not Aboriginal culture. The issues that we have with the Quran and with the Bible is that women aren't their own being. We see it from the beginning. Her husband is chosen. The conversation on who she is going to marry takes place between the two men. Her value hinges on her virginity. Or as Kevin Samuels and them is now saying, her body count. You cannot be anti-Abrahamic faith and patriarchal. They don't mix. Either women belong to men or women belong to themselves. But if there's a shift, and this is what I have to constantly say, the fight is about culture. It's a culture shift. It's a culture change. I keep telling y'all, it ain't just them changing how we view the world, but they also change how we view ourselves. You don't define your masculinity by physical power, brute force. This is a game of, like, really, this is a game of intelligence. Intelligence is what's going to get us out of the situation that we in. Critically thinking our way out of the current condition. So that's clear. So let me just keep going. She has the same number of senses that distinguish men, and is like man, a subject of human government, capable of understanding, obeying, and being affected by law. That she is capable of forming an intelligent judgment as to the character of public men and public measures. Not that she gonna always, well, women gonna make an emotional decision. That's very Eurocentric, very, very Eurasian like. That's anti-African. And righteously is anti, like, it ain't just anti-African, it's anti-global aboriginal, like culture, period. And she may exercise her right of choice in respect both to the law and the lawmakers. Nothing could be more simple or more reasonable. 19th century black leaders were concerned about gender roles, and exceptional black men supported gender equality. Martin Delany stressed that both genders needed to work equally for racial uplift, like Frederick Douglass. So, and this is what's crazy. I just want to take this back real quick, right? As a dark side womanist, and this is me. This is, I can't put being a womanist on anybody else in the dark side, but this is me. I believe that all of the dark side should be womanist. I think that's African. But that's me. And we'll see what direction we continue to go to as we grow. We only continue to grow. I don't think though the foundation can be anything else. Like, especially if we're talking about, if we're building a culture that's anti Abrahamic, I think that says it in itself. I think that says it in itself. And for the most part, I think for the most part, our rhetoric is like, is based around womanism. What we would say. We created a great mother, to head the pantheon. In the beautiful goddess Stemia. So we already really, the future of shit, righteously. So I ain't even gotta even really, I ain't really gotta get no disclaimers, man. We already the future of this shit. So, but the main thing I did want to touch on was when you talk about Frederick Douglass, right? Think about what he put. And this is 1888 in this talk. I am a radical woman suffrage man. If you notice, what is he taking the position of? If today he be taking the position of a womanist. That's very clear. The position, the fundamental position of the women's suffrage movement is scarcely less simple than of the anti-slavery movement, meaning it's way more complex. So let me see. Where was I? So like Frederick Douglass, like Frederick Douglass, Delaney felt that gender equality would strengthen the race, not that it would make black females independent and autonomous. So that means that it was not a threat. It was not a threat. Do you know I've been hearing that women's independence is the greatest threat to the black community or to the community in general? Like what the hell? Shout out to the Sith Lord, power to the dark side God. Women's independence. Like, you know how fucking sick you gotta be as a man to say that you're threatened by women having independence? I'm confused as hell. And so and this is when you use words like threat as a man. Well, what do you do to a threat? Because I thought I thought what they would call systemic racism was probably was number one threat on the list. I didn't know black women having independence was. But Frederick Douglass and Martin Delany would disagree. They would disagree with patriarchy. But let's go, let's keep going. He stressed that both gender roles were needed, right? To for equality, for racial uplift, to work towards equality and racial uplift, right? Let me keep going. Black females independent and autonomous. As co-editors of the North Star, Douglass and Delany had a masthead in 1847 which read, "Right is of no sex. Truth is of no color." I mean, they seen them both as a problem together. And so when you look at a Kimberly Crenshaw, in the process of what they deem as progress, women, and especially black women, they seem to they get separated from the fight. No, it ain't been women's independence. It's been black male independence that has been worse on them. At the 1848 meeting of the National Negro Convention, Delany presented a proposal that began, "Whereas we fully believe in the equality of the sexes, therefore, without a doubt, black males have a historical legacy of pro-women's liberation to draw upon. Even so, there were black male leaders who opposed Douglass's support of rights for women. In the essay Reconstructing Black Masculinity, I state that most black men recognize the powerful and necessary role black women had played as freedom fighters in the effort to abolish slavery, yet they still wanted black women to be subordinated. Explain further. They wanted black women to conform to the gender norms set by white society. They wanted to be recognized as quote unquote men, as patriarchs by other men. And see, this is the point, right? Because what you hear is you're not gonna get no respect from other men until you can show you got control over your woman. But you're not gonna get no respect from your woman until you can stop being a bitch to other men. To your issue, and this is where the shit gets ridiculous, right? This is where the shit gets really ridiculous. Your issue with getting respect from other men on the planet ain't got shit to do with how your woman is acting. Nigga, it got shit to do with you being bitch made and you ain't doing shit about your stuff being taken. Instead, you're just cool being a part of the process of getting fucked over. You cool with that. You cool with that. She should be subordinate to you, watching you be subordinate to another man. Fuck out of here. Niggas is sitting there talking about, well, in black land, how are we gonna have electricity? But black women should be subordinate. Nigga, you don't even know how the fuck you gonna run electricity? If niggas, first of all, I didn't know niggas was scared of the dark. Second of all, we don't have any electrician. Power to the dark side. What's good, Alcaton? I just got off the phone, bro, with your cousin, bro. For real. I just got off the phone with your cousin. Or your nephew. My fault, your nephew. Yeah, I just chopped it up with him for a minute too, man. What's good with you, God? I was like, damn, Brian, ain't talked to that nigga in like 15 years, bro. That should have been a minute. I tapped in for a second. Probably right. A matter of fact, bro, I actually got off the phone with him right before I started this live and shit. Yeah. But yeah, man, that ain't our issue. Our issue of gaining any sort of respect from anybody got to do with our willingness to die. I keep telling y'all, we can't have this conversation. The conversation is liberty or death. It can't be liberation or equal housing. We cool with the Fair Housing Act. It can't be liberation or we'll just clean all our credit up. You can't keep talking about liberation or, as long as y'all get black, we can homestead again. The question is it it's liberty or death? And if you ain't got the death on the other end of liberty, then you ain't getting no fucking respect, nigga. And you shouldn't respect yourself. It's just being honest. Like, somebody else will tell you how good you been and all that extra ass shit. I'm just gonna tell you, we should be fucking ashamed right now. We really should be. We really should be. The price for freedom is death. That's it. Not reparation. Death. Death. Not you living fucking comfortable. It's death. There's no respect for a second class citizen that's cool with being a second class citizen. Shout out to Midtown Pookie. I appreciate you in the building, guy. What's good? What's good? There's zero respect. So no, you can't go, women should be subordinate, and then at the same time, you're subordinate to the fucking white man. No, nigga, go get that shit situated. That's like, nigga, she been watching you. She just got through watching you get your ass whooped. And then you gonna try to get to the fucking car and try to bow up on her ass. She looking like, nigga, why you ain't do that shit with that nigga over there? That just put hands on you. Like, bro, get that shit up out of here. There's no getting around it. There's zero respect until you got death on the other end of liberty. But right now, niggas talk that liberty shit and they cool with a PPP loan. Like, let's just keep it 100. They cool with a PPP loan. What's good, Tequila? Appreciate you in the building. There's no getting around that. You don't need no fucking domestic discipline to get respect. Nigga, go get your shit back. Or die trying and you'll get respect, nigga. Like, if we die trying, I guarantee the fucking doctrine that the women teach the children would change, nigga. It would be no more fucking Jesus talk. The shit would be all about us, nigga. They gonna make sure we get our get back. They gonna make sure we come back with our get back. But nigga, you gotta be willing to, like, nigga, you can't talk that fucking respect shit. Your respect globally ain't got shit to do with you having your women in check. Having your women in check. The weird shit. What the fuck does that mean? Pimps have their women in check. The Chinese woman is in check. The European woman is in check. Nigga, the black woman's supposed to be God. What the fuck is you talking about? There ain't no in check. And you ain't even no having no conversation, nigga. You in check. What the fuck is we even talking about? You in check. You in check trying to check somebody else. Shit weird. They wanted black women to conform to the gender norms set by white society. They wanted to be recognized as men. Recognized as men. By who? By other men. Including who? White men. Yet they could not assume this position if black women were not willing to conform to prevailing sexist gender norms. Many black women who had endured white supremacist patriarchal domination during slavery did not want to be dominated by black men after manumission. Like black men, they had contradictory positions on gender. On one hand, they did not want to be dominated. But on the other hand, they wanted black men to be protectors and providers. After slavery ended, enormous tension and conflict emerged between black women and men as folks struggled to be self-determining. As they worked to create standards for community and family life, gender roles continued to be problematic. Trying to put niggas in a box. You're a human being. Now let's keep going. These contradictions became the norm in black life. In the early part of the 20th century, black male thinkers and leaders were like their white male counterparts, debating the question of gender equality. Intellectual and activist W.E.B. Du Bois writing on the behalf of black women's rights in 1920, declared, "We cannot abolish the new economic freedom of women." Period. Why? Because remember, W.E.B. Du Bois talks about what? You can't you can't just have independence for for women in general unless you're talking about an economically independent woman. Period. You have to be talking about an economically independent woman. Well, and I might be have time to get into that, but let's keep going real quick. W.E.B. Du Bois, writing on the behalf of black women's rights in 1920, declared, "We cannot abolish the new economic freedom of women. We cannot imprison women again in a home or require them all on pain of death to be nurses and housekeepers." The uplift for women is, next to the problem of the color and the peace movement, our greatest modern cause, influenced by the work of black women, anti-sexist activists, Anna Julia Cooper. Du Bois never wavered in this belief that black women should be seen as co-equal with black men. God damn. We got, like, what the fuck, man? Like, really? We gotta have a conversation on if women are equal. And then it's cool. Like, it's one thing, bro. I turn on C-SPAN and I hear fucking white men arguing that shit. But goddamn, nigga, we don't know that women, black women are equal to black men. Like, what the fuck is we talking about? The argument of being equal is an argument of being a human being. Our whole argument on coming out of slavery and our fight for our existence was to be seen as a human being. The point of the Constitution being a contradiction is because they didn't see you as a human being. How the fuck you gonna turn around and then make a decision that women ain't human? Like, at some point, there's gotta be like a shift in that. And in 2023, we can't be having dumbass domestic discipline conversation. It's really sickening. Like, man, despite the stellar example of W.E.B. Du Bois, who continually supported the rights of women, overall, black males seem to see the necessity of black females participating as co-equals in the struggle for racial uplift, with the implicit understanding that once freedom was achieved, black females would take their rightful place subordinate to the superior will of man. Like, what the hell? In keeping with sexist norms, sexist black folks believe that slavery and racism sought the emasculation of Afro-American men, and that the responsibility of black folks to counter this, that black women were to encourage and supported the manhood of our man. As editor of the Woman's Page. And see, what you end up getting is, we ain't really ready to slide on who we supposed to. Like, we supposed to be on 1600 in Pennsylvania, but instead we rather slide on Crenshaw Bully. And what ends up happening is this is a fight to prove masculinity, fucking manhood shit. As the editor of the Woman's Page of the newspaper The Negro World, Amy Jack Garvey, wife of the radical thinker Marcus Garvey, declared, "We are tired of hearing Negro men say, 'There is a better day coming,' while they do nothing to usher in that day." God damn. Man, hold on, man. Whoa. That wasn't Garvey wife, was it? I think I just heard Garvey's wife just say that niggas been bitches for a long time. That's what I think I just literally heard. I think I just heard Marcus Garvey wife all the way back then make the same exact claim. Niggas is talking that better day shit, and that day ain't you ain't doing shit, bro, to manifest it. Why? Because nigga, you ain't really want it. You ain't about that death shit. See, you think you can fight for liberation and equality. No, nigga, you trade in liberation for equality. And you do that so your ass ain't gotta die, nigga. Like, let's just be real. You do that so you ain't gotta die. And you think the women don't see that shit. No, like, yeah, it's very clear. The women see that shit. That you talk that shit, the liberation shit, but you're not really ready to die. Let's start this one more time. As the editor of the women's page of the newspaper, The Negro World, Amy Jack Garvey, wife of the radical thinker Marcus Garvey, declared, "We are tired." God damn. So they was already tired back then, and we expect them to not be tired in 2023. She said, "We are tired of hearing Negro men say there is a better day coming while they do nothing to usher in that day. We are becoming so impatient that we are getting in the front ranks and serve notice that we brush aside the halting, cowardly Negro leaders. Mr. Black Man, watch your step. Strengthen your shaking knees and move forward, or we will displace you and lead on to victory and glory." God damn. This passage gives a good indication of the fact that educated Black women struggle to repress their power, to stand behind their man. So she's standing behind you, nigga, watching your knees shake while you supposed to be holding the fucking line. You supposed to be holding the line. Like, I can't even believe this, bro. Like, for real. So what like at this point, I just gotta say, so what the hell kind of argument? We can argue against the Cynthia G all the fuck we want. You can argue against Women's Sphere. You gonna now argue against Marcus Garvey wife? Don't nobody know what the fuck they talking about? It's Garvey wife wrong. I just gotta know. She described it down to a T, nigga. Your knees is shaking, nigga. Stand forward. Spooked. They know you spooked. But she should be subordinate. Man, get that shit up out of here. We got a lot of work to do before we start talking about having women subordinate to men and some fucking domestic discipline. Nigga, yeah, we need it needs to be some domestic discipline, all right. It ain't got nothing to do within the home. That ain't got nothing to do within the home. The respect that you're looking for, you're gonna have to go get that for yourself. And it don't matter how much you bow up on women, no matter how much we decide we're gonna discipline black women, that respect you looking for, it ain't it's the nigga that's outside, bro. You're gonna have to go outside to go get that. So acting hard in the house and in the mirror with it and all of that extra shit, cool. But the nigga that owe you is outside. That's who owe you your money. And if you think that she don't see you been avoiding this nigga, yet you've been trying to act like you putting her in check, while meanwhile you avoiding this nigga, there's not gonna be much respect there. I'm sorry. Zero. You can't even respect yourself enough to go out there and at least take an ass whooping. You get more respect if you at least go outside and get your ass whooped than you is avoiding this nigga. And then trying to bow up inside of the house. Like, nigga, that shit look weird. So I think this is it's very telling that we would hear the same argument. And I just want to read this one more time. Just one more time. And shout out to Amy Jack Garvey, because this sister is now going into the pantheon. We're gonna figure out this might be right here. Amy Jack might be the goddess. She might be the goddess of womanism or women's rights or some shit like that. I don't know. We're gonna figure that out. We gotta get a goddess for women's rights, for the black women's rights, especially a black woman empowerment guy. Who better than to have it be Marcus Garvey's wife, right? I just want to read this one more time because this guy, I mean, really though, this shit right here hit. We are tired of hearing the Negro man say, there is a better day coming, while they do nothing to usher in that day. We are becoming so impatient that we are getting in front of the ranks and serve notice that we brush aside the halting, cowardly Negro leaders. This is every which way you can call a nigga bitch back in the 1900s. I just want y'all to know that. Like, she really saying, nigga, you a bitch. But I guess in them days, they didn't really have that word to like go back to. So it's like halting, cowardly Negro leaders. Mr. Black Man, watch your step. Strengthen your shaking knees and move forward. God damn. Like, this is how you call a nigga a bitch in the 1900s. For real. If this was 2023 and she wrote that, the language would be totally different. But it's the early 1900s. They don't really have that. So instead of just saying you really looking like a bitch right now in front of us, we see you spooked, scared, you don't want to die. She was like, nigga, I see your knees shaking, and you at least strengthen up your knees, nigga, move forward. You won't even take the steps. You won't even take the proper steps. I mean, let's just be honest. We've been playing this in between game for a long time. Too long. Too long. And then we try to pretend like when a nigga get popped or choked out by the police, like we finna move and do some shit for a good week. Too long. But it ends up being the same thing. You only want for them to see you as a man. See, how we view ourselves is still dictated on how they view us. The respect that we have for ourselves is determined on how they view us. You're letting this determine on whether or not you see yourself as a human being. This is a disadvantage. The way that we view the world is a disadvantage. Clear. So we can, like I said, we can argue it all that we want to. My fault, y'all. We can make all the arguments that we want to. It remains the same though. They see us. Respect ain't gonna come with no domestic discipline. It's just not. We not done. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Outspoken women's rights activists. Oh, excuse me. Outspoken women's rights advocates in the latter part of the 19th century, like Anna Julia Cooper, were more militant about the need for Black women to have equal access to education and forms of power, especially what? Economic power. Because anytime you're talking about independence, and see, this is what's sad. This is what's really sad. They even seen that the struggle of equality was an economic issue. I'm sorry. There's a storm going on right there. Definitely have to get something to drink. Okay. Where am I? Throughout the 1900s, Black men and women debated the issue of gender equality. White supremacist capitalists, patriarchy's refusal to allow Black males full access to employment while offering Black women a place in the service economy created a context where Black males and females could not conform to the standard sexist roles in regard to work, even if they wanted to. It was the participation of Black women in the workforce that led to the notion that Black women were matriarchal leaders in the home. In actuality, Black female workers often handed their paychecks over to the males who occupied the patriarchal space of leadership in the home. Simply working did not mean Black women were free. The gender roles that Black folks formed in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were complex. It was not a simple world of Black women working and therefore exercising power in the home. Many contemporary Black folks forget that in the world of the early 20th century, Black people were far more likely to live with extended kin. A Black woman who worked as a maid, a housekeeper, or a laundress, or etc., was far more likely to give her money towards the collective good and not for her own use or power. While social critics looking at Black life have continually emphasized the notion that Black men were symbolically castrated because Black women were often the primary breadwinners. They have called attention to the reality of the working Black woman giving away her earnings. God damn. Not all Black families cared about the Black women earning more. As long as Black males controlled their earnings, and now that a vast majority of white women in this nation work and many of them earn more than their white male spouses, the evidence is there to confirm that men are less concerned about who earns more and more concerned about who controls the money. If the man controls the money, even if his wife is wealthy, the evidence suggests that he will not feel emasculated. Black men and women have always had a diversity of gender roles. So shit, she even been, man, come on, man. I ain't, man, hold on. Before I even go. Some Black men wanting to be patriarchs and others turning away from the role. Long before contemporary feminist theory talked about the value of male participation in parenting, the idea that men could stay home and raise children while women worked had already been proven in Black life. Black women and men have never been praised for having created a diversity of gender roles. In the first essay I wrote about Black masculinity more than 10 years ago, the lengthy arguments I made are worth quoting again here. Without implying that Black women and men lived in gender utopia, I am suggesting that Black sex roles, and particularly the role of men, have been more complex and problematized in Black life than is believed. This was especially the case when all Black people lived in segregated neighborhoods. Racial integration has had a profound impact on gender roles, on Black gender roles. It has helped to promote a climate wherein most Black women and men accept sexist notions of gender roles. Unfortunately, many changes have occurred in the way Black people think about gender. Yet the shift from one standpoint to another has not fully been documented. For example, to what extent did the civil rights movement, with its definition of freedom, have equal opportunity with whites, sanctioned looking at white gender roles as a norm Black people should imitate? Why has there been so little positive interest shown in the alternative lifestyles of Black men? In every segregated Black community in the United States, there are adult Black men married, unmarried, gay, straight, living in households where they do not assert patriarchal domination and yet live fulfilled lives, where they are not sitting around worried about castration. Again, it must be emphasized that the Black men who are most worried about castration and emasculation are those who have completely absorbed white supremacist patriarchal definitions of masculinity. Black people begin to support patriarchy more as more civil rights were gained and the contributions Black women made to the struggle for Black liberation were no longer seen as essential and necessary contributions. Shit. How did they do that? But see, this is where it gets tricky, right? Because what they do is they make Martin Luther King the face of the Civil Rights Act, right? But what ends up happening with making Martin Luther King the face of the Civil Rights Act, people shit on Martin Luther King, but they don't realize that the work that they're shitting on is a lot of the work from like a from a Diane Nash, even a Reverend Phil Lawson, right? But a lot of the women who contributed a lot to, basically the civil rights being effective in the first place, what ends up happening is niggas start talking about how the civil rights is a waste of time, right? So we begin to get a lot of, it begins to become a lot of disrespect, especially even when we talking about an Ella Baker, and a lot of work that she even put in. Let me keep going though. Significantly, when the white patriarchal world begins to turn its critical gaze on black families, a negative critique of black families become more commonplace. It has simply been an accepted norm that given the politics of white supremacy, the racial injustice that black women would struggle equally with black men on all fronts to ensure racial uplift. At the very beginning of the 20th century, the U.S. Census Bureau issued a warning about the nature of black families, calling calling attention to the fact that African American women were disproportionately abandoned by their husbands or had never married but had children. When E. Franklin Frazier published in 1939, studied the Negro family in the United States, which was considered groundbreaking at the time it was written. He endeavored to call attention to the diversity of martial and partnership arrangements black people were making, as well as the impact of class on black family relations. Notice, and some of the ways that they even talk about it, because the introduction, think about the term that they use for kids of another of a like the negative terms that they use for kids of somebody that belong to another man, right? In our culture, we didn't have that, like a culture where we looked at that as a negative. You just stepped in. He endeavored to call attention to the diversity of the martial or the partnership arrangement of black people. Let me see. Impact of class on black family relations. Frazier was one of the first academics to call attention to the way in which racist barriers to black people, assuming sexist defined roles, disrupted marriage in black families because it led to a lack of interest in sustaining two-parent households. Yet, Frazier never suggested that these arrangements were emasculating to black men. Many males were as uninterested in traditional sexist roles as were females, if not more so. And unlike white males, black males did not have an institutionalized patriarchal influence morality to make them feel less manly if they abandoned family. In the 50s, most black folks were trying to conform to patriarchal norms of marriage and family. Only 17% of black households were headed by women, and homes with two parents were more present more than the accepted norm. Though limited, black women could find work in the service industry when there were no jobs available to black men, which meant that they were often primary breadwinners in black families. And I don't know if y'all know, but I kind of get into this. This was in a debate that I had with Taz actually. One of the things that I brought out was the way that they look, the way that America like viewed the black woman. They didn't view her as a mother. They viewed her as a worker, and they view white women as a mother. And so even when they come out with like the Social Security Act and I forgot what else it was, but they didn't give black women access to that shit. They was only giving that to white women. Let me keep going though. Now there are no records to indicate whether masses of black men coming from a slave history where work was compulsory and oftentimes brutal saw work as crucial to their masculine identity. Educated black men imitating the manners and mores of middle class and upper class white men were few in number. Unlike their poor, illiterate black brothers, they were obsessed with the notion of protecting and providing for their family. Certainly, many black men adapted to the reality of white supremacy, providing the menial jobs for black women while denying employment to black men without either internalizing the blame for this situation or projecting it onto black women. Which what you end up seeing today. It gets projected on the black women. Julius Lester wrote about this spirit of resistance to white norms and Lookout. Whitey, black power's gone, get your mama. Explaining that it is partially true that blacks have accepted the white man's image of themselves. However, it is also true that they have resisted accepting this image. It is not an exaggeration to say that the history of blacks in America is one of the most resistant, is one of resistance. But that resistance has remained for the most part unorganized. And thus, the difficulty in recognizing the struggle has been constantly taking place. The resistance in black people's lives have remained has remained little known in America because the racism that exists in this country will not allow any other view of blacks to exist except the racist view. When other views are presented, racism prevents their acceptance, unless, of course, these other views are articulated by whites. It has served the interests of racism for white people to ignore positive aspects of black life, particularly any shift away from sexism. It was vital to white male self-esteem to belittle unconventional black masculinity, saying that these men were castrated. Now we use the same, and see, this is where it gets ugly, right? Because this is when I say you hear the same Eurocentric or Eurasian rhetoric coming out of these niggas today. What is another word for saying that you ain't castrated? Nigga, you ain't got no balls. She took your pants. You left your balls at your nuts. You all let your nuts swing. Weirdo shit. When the United States government took a critical look at black families and Daniel Patrick published in his 1965 report, The Negro Family, the imperialist, white supremacist capitalist state was the voice of authority, posting the notion that black women had emasculated black males by being matriarchs and that participating in the armed forces by joining the military was one way for black men to reclaim their patriarchal status. God damn. The discourse of emasculation shifted from white supremacy and accountability for black male oppression to blaming black women. Sexist mores, which encouraged women hating, influenced black men to place accountability on the black females for their woes. In reality, even if every black woman had stopped working to stand by her man, racist discrimination and exploitation would still have made it impossible for black men to be patriarchs. Significantly, Moynihan's report came just in time to reinforce the notion that it was important for males to fight in imperialist war. Hold on, mama. Yeah, I'm finna have to end this. My mama just called. Retrospectively, it is easy to see the reason that the state helped stir up gender conflict between black women and men, just as it was preparing to enter various wars around the world. Just before the United States declared war in Iraq in 2003, Newsweek magazine published a series of articles suggesting black women were emasculating black men by being dominant in the world of education and work. God, man, come on. Ironically, the imperialist white supremacist capitalist state, which claimed that black family would be healthier if black men headed households, had no difficult taking men away from households and sending them far away from their families to wage war, to sacrifice their lives for a country that was denying them full citizenship. The Benign Report did not create gender warfare in black life. It simply validated the sexist belief of many black American men and, to a grave extent, legitimized their efforts to subjugate black women. Just as unenlightened white men were attacking black families for not being headed by strong patriarchal men, white women, along with individual black females, spearheaded a women's liberation movement, which announced their refusal to remain subordinate, proclaiming their desire to be equal to men of their class. Very little is written about the extent to which the image of emasculation that racist white males projected onto black males was indicative of the feelings of impotence many white men felt in their relationships with powerful white women. Even though Monahan's was suggesting black men were emasculated in reality, many black men were clearly stating that they would rather be playboys than providers any day. White men were attacking black men in the 60s for not fulfilling the patriarchal role when it came to work and family. And black men were telling white men that sexuality was the only real site where manhood mattered, and there the black man ruled. On one hand, some white males were accusing black men of being castrated, and on the other hand, white males envied black males their refusal to wholeheartedly embrace the sexist norm. Individual white males seeking alternatives to patriarchal masculinity turned black men, especially artists and musicians, for new definitions of manhood. Writing about his fascination with black masculinity in 1963 essay, My Negro Problem and Ours, Norman Pohartz declared, just as in childhood I envied Negroes for what seemed to me their superior masculinity, so I envy them today for what seems to be their superior physical grace and beauty. Black masculinity then and now was seen as the quintessential embodiment of man as outsider and rebel. Black males had access to the cool white man longed for, embracing the vision of black male cool in his 1960 essay, American Sexual Reference. Black male and Amiri Baraka boldly stated that American white men are trained to be fags, and posed that the question, do you understand the softness of the white man, the weakness? This attack on white masculinity and others like it were common among militant black power advocates. It was not a critique of patriarchy. It was a call to arms in white black men, were asserting that white men did not fulfill the primal ideal patriarchy manhood because they relied on technology to insert power rather than brute strength. And more important, the 60s were the movement when black men declared that they were connected to white men. Brothers under the skin, bound by masculinity, by a shared allegiance to patriarchy. Godly. When black males began in the name of black power to completely embrace patriarchal masculinity. The historical movement of the racial uplift, rooted in nonviolence and gender equality, was ruthless, undermined, whereas an unconventional perspective on masculinity had given black males alternative grounds on which to build healthy self-esteem. The embrace of patriarchal masculinity meant that most black men measuring against the norm would also be less than a man. Failures unable to realize the ideal. Such thinking led to grave psychological unrest and disease. Tragically, collectively, black men began at this point in our nation's history to blame black women for their fate. This blaming ignited the flames of a gender war so intense that it has practically consumed the historical memory of black males and females working together equally for liberation, creating love and family and community. It has practically destroyed beyond recognition the representation of an alternative black man seeking freedom for self and loved ones, a rebel black man eager to create and make his own destiny. This is the image of the black male that must be recovered, restored, so that it can stand as an example of revolutionary manhood. So that's that. That is definitely that. I wanted to be able to I definitely wanted to get that out. Yeah, those studies were constructed to tear our families apart. That's a fact. That's a fact. Because and this was the like it was an attack. It was almost like they were just playing mind games. You know what I'm saying? Basically, getting you to start, questioning yourself and how you was moving. And it's righteously, and I'll get back into it when I go in on anthropology and sociology. But the way, families are built based on the conditions and the environment, right? That's just simple. So the environment and the conditions will dictate whether the norm is for families to have uh, um, one husband, if it's normal for them to have one kid, multiple kids. It'll dictate whether or not each it's normal for the families to have more than one wife. It'll be, the conditions in the environment to dictate whether or not it's normal for women to have more than one husband. All of these things are controlled and dictated on the society, right? The conditions and the environment, because a family is based on survival, right? That's the whole point of a family, is survival. Your survival, and then ensuring your survival. How do you do that? By protecting your family, because you need them to survive also. So with that being said, I definitely got to say, man, I appreciate everybody that came through today. This was definitely this was a blessed one. I appreciate y'all sitting through this. I'm gonna do a part 2 and drop the link. I think in my part 2, I'm gonna go into W.E.B. Du Bois' book when he talks about the condemnation of women. And yeah, we're gonna get into it, man. I want to drop the link. Hopefully, I get Domo up here. We can get Nyame, the Sith Lord, up here, and we can kind of just build on that. Like I said, at the end of the day, man, this is, we creating a culture, right? And so the point is that some of the traditions and stuff that we come from didn't always have it all the way right. They didn't have it all the way together. And if they did, we wouldn't be in the position that we in right now. So the point of us creating a culture is not only to create a bond with each other, but to get us out of the conditions that we in, and also keep us out of this shit, right? We don't want to make a cycle, right? We don't want to make a full 360 and end up right back here. So y'all already know. Shout out, man, to everybody that came through. Power to the dark side, right? Special praise to the most beautiful goddess of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, Stemian, whose image is the most beautiful Whoopi Goldberg. Remember, if you are listening to this, together, we are Babel. Let's build.
Chest. And all these pieces. Almost all the streets that I've crossed got flowers and pictures posted on the sidewalk. Memories of almost all the homies I've lost. I feel like mama's looking at me like it's my fault. He be alive, he wasn't fucking with you, demon. And now he gone and I'm still picking up the pieces. I swear to God, I really felt that in my chest. She looked me in my eyes, said, I pray your mama next. I stride on, no escape from the expression that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I stride on, but there's no escape from the expression that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I go high, I wake up flinching in my sleep, I'm fighting demons. I wake up sweating on my sleep, I think I'm bleeding. One in the neck in case somebody tries sleeping. I go high, I wake up flinching in my sleep, I'm fighting demons. I wake up sweating on my sleep, I think I'm bleeding. One in the neck in case somebody tries sleeping. Almost all the streets that I've crossed got flowers and pictures posted on the sidewalk. Memories of almost all the homies I've lost. I feel like mama's looking at me like it's my fault. He be alive, he wasn't fucking with you, demon. And now he gone and I'm still picking up the pieces. I swear to God, I really felt that in my chest. She looked me in my eyes, said, I pray your mama next. I stride on, escape from the expression that was written on my mama's face. And it's a miracle she ever even kept her faith. I go high. Spirit when it's moving through. Dark side, clearing up all the lies in the rumors too. Dark side, you say you want my life, you gotta fight me first. Dark side, come outside round here, there's nothing like church. Dark side, come and get this life work. They talked about Jesus, give them something to Babylon. Just know my whole team is battle tested and battle strong. One world speaking that Tower Babel tongue. Cole Hammurabi thinking ancient Babylon. No pun intended, Reaganomics had us under avalanche. We took off like a rocket, they was praying we could never launch into the upper echelon. You can never be yourself. Every day is Comic-Con, fast money Ramadan. Who collected Condom? Cold check my vital signs. Motel 6 float. Woke up with the brightest mind. Out of sight, out of idle mind. They hate it when you idolize. We living in the final times. Guess you Ellen Keller blind. Spirit when it's moving through. Dark side, clearing up all the lies and the rumors too. Dark side, you say you want my life, you gotta fight me first. side, come outside round here, there's nothing like church. Dark side, come and get this light. Put my soul on the altar, I never offer a sacrifice. The blood that we need for the lamb ain't never acting right. I take my path tonight, knowing that I might have to fight. I probably grab a knife and a 9. I guess I'm packing light, focus on the now, just as much as the afterlife. I recognize the spirit is only taking up half the fight. Stairway to heaven, he won't make it up half a flight. He working, making bacon bits, probably out on the Sabbath night. Shoot for the moon, hoping to hit a satellite. You can ask them why when they see me, they call on Adonai. When we both know at the most he telling you half a lie. Feel the transition begin to happen when passing time. I came back in the sky, just like an astronaut, to say you selling Africans out. See you and asking Mike, and it's sad to say they really had it bad for Christ. And I hear the Habasha thinking they are the half of
Holy Spirit when it's moving through.
Dark side,
Clearing up all the lies and the rumors too.
dark side.
You say you want my life, you gotta fight me first.
Dark side,
Come outside round here, there's nothing like church.
dark side.
Come and get this life work.